Leopard 1A5 main battle tanks have been in combat in Ukraine for the very first time. The combat dolphins of the Russian Navy in the Black Sea might be freed from their cages, and we have reports about sleeper agents inside of Ukrainians' SBU, but more about this in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. Hello and welcome to this situation report. We're starting on the Eastern Front, mostly in Luhansk. We have Russian attacks at Synkivka, in the direction of Petropavlivka, at Novoselivske, Terny, Torske, and the Serebryanske forest. So here, and here are attacks, Russian attacks being reported. The Russians have been successful in Synkivka. There is a video showing us that they have, which is geolocalized, that they have now entered the town of Synkivka, basically reached the first 2 or 3 houses. This is here. So here in the north, they have reached that point after probably 2 to 3 months of offensive in this direction. The Russians have also taken a video of the first Leopard 1A5 in combat that we can see here. Let me speed it up a little for you because we see the Leopard 1A5 shooting, moving back and forth, doing the Sega dance, basically making sure it's less easy to hit, but this is in vain because it is getting hit and then being taken out. As we can see here, initially probably with an ATGM, and then we have artillery strikes on top of it. At the end of the video, you can see that the tank seems to be more or less intact still. We do not see fire damage, at least not visibly. We see that the hatches are open, so the crew has left the tank, which then will probably lead to it being destroyed with drones fairly soon. So while for the first time, Leopard 1A5s have been seen in combat, it has not been successful. And here it was geolocalized where exactly it happened. This is here, and we can see that characteristic form of a water body, which is here. So the tank was more or less here and probably shooting over in this direction on enemy positions at a distance of 2.5 kilometers, something in this ballpark, seeing it more in a supportive role than in frontal attacks, than in a metal or armored spearhead in this regard. This also shows us, while this was a bad example of it, it shows us how generally obsolete tanks are still highly valuable on both sides, by the way. So Leopard 1A5 is far away from being top of the notch, but so is T-62. But when it comes to firing at targets at 2-3 kilometers distance, probably firing high explosives or HESH, they still more or less do the job. Further south, we have reports from fighting around south of the Seversky Donetsk. There are dozens of Russian attacks around Bakhmut, both in the direction of Ivanivske, Khomove, Klishivka, and Andrivka. And we do have the confirmation now that the majority of Khomove has now fallen to the Russian side. Their attacks there have been successful. So roughly that area here should now be under Russian control. Ukrainian side is confirming that. Ukrainian military bloggers admit that they have been pushed out of this position. So we can consider it to be a fact as of now. Further south, close to Horlivka, in this area, we have attacks by both sides, Ukrainians as well as Russians attack here, but nothing has changed in the overall control of that position. At Avdiivka, the Russian attacks are continuing, both here in the north as well as here in the south. We have some Russian claims that they managed to advance here. I do not have any confirmation. We have some claims that they managed to advance at Kruta Balka. Also, again, no confirmation. There was a Ukrainian counterattack at Stepove. As of now, it seems to still be the case that Stepove is cleared from Russians, so they have been more or less being pushed back close to the railroad line here, but no change in overall situation in the north. And south in Severny, the Russians have been somewhat successful in those two areas here. Further south, we have fighting at Marinka and at Novomikhailivka. attacks by the Russians, and the Ukrainians have attacked in this direction. From my understanding, north of that bodies of water here, they did attack in this direction, but I cannot see any success in their control, in the change of control, or any success by the Ukrainians. At further west, we have continued Russian attacks. Also, mostly the focus seems clearly to be to reach Staromayorsk from the west. This is a ridge line here, which would allow the Russians control over the valley here, and they try to keep pushing. There are some claims by the Russians that they have achieved this, but only some claims. I do not see any of the bigger, more honest Russian military bloggers confirming this, nor do I have visual evidence, nor do I have the Ukrainians confirming it. So I think the front line has not changed, even though there are claims that are different. At Orikhiv, the Ukrainians are saying they have been successful in the direction of Kopani. I cannot really confirm this, but we do see that, for instance, Riba puts the map roughly around here. So at least according to Riba, the Russian positions should be somewhat further west to their current positions when we look at this pro-Ukrainian deep state map. I'm not fully convinced to which degree this has been successful, but it seems likely that the Ukrainians were somewhat able probably to advance along that tree line here and here in the forested area, but I cannot confirm it fully as of now. At the bridgehead over the Dnipro, the Ukrainians attacked in the forested area, and one of the big Russian military bloggers confirmed that they have been partially successful. So according to him, they would have been somewhat successful advancing in this direction here. But the same mill blogger is saying that significant reinforcements are arriving on the Russian side in this area, and he is expecting that there will be a serious attempt to push in the Ukrainian bridgeheads very soon. So at least according to him, we should expect massive counterattacks by the Russians on those bridgeheads fairly soon. We have a H.I. Sutton, who is a naval specialist, has checked the satellite pictures, and at least according to him, the cages that usually contain the Russian Dolphins, the combat Dolphins that are trained, for instance, to attack divers, those cages have apparently been breached now during the strong storm over the last few days. So it's fairly likely that the Dolphins have managed to escape from there and probably are now out in the Black Sea without supervision, if you want it this way, anymore. Overall, we have some weird news from the Russian side here. The two majors talk about the situation along the Dnipro Islands, and according to them, mobilized personnel is being sent to the Dnipro Islands on positions there where there is no overall operational goal. They've been sent there as a punishment, and the kontraktniki, the regular soldiers, are not being sent there. They are staying behind. So according to them, some soldiers are basically being sent on the islands as a punishment without serious support, without Kasevac, without proper artillery support. All of this is being done to punish them. I have no way of confirming it. We have to see that Dva Majors, the two majors, is a pro-Russian military blogger, a well-connected one, so it might be true. Whether that makes military sense to do punishment by expending your personnel is a different story, but yeah, I'll leave it to you and to the Russians to decide what is the smart thing. We have news from the nuclear power plant as well. The IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, has said that several of their workers have heard the characteristic, the distinctive sound when multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, are being fired, and they've heard it very close to the nuclear power plant, basically accusing the Russians to fire MLRS from the area of the nuclear power plant. When the shelling happened around the nuclear power plant, we've heard it in the past. We've even seen some videos from the Ukrainians striking, among others, a BM-21 system right inside of the area of the nuclear power plant, which was used by the Russians to attack Ukrainian positions while taking basically the danger of damaging a nuclear power plant as a protection for their own artillery. Now we have the IAEA basically confirming it. IAEA, I guess. Yeah, basically confirming it. Partisan activity or sabotage activity, we have something as well. The wife of Kirilo Budanov, the head of the GUR, the Ukrainian military intelligence, was apparently poisoned together with several other GUR members. She is being treated medically, so I guess she'll survive. That's what's being told, but Kirilo Budanov is not being, he was not poisoned. Now, this is a pure speculation, but it seems like this could be in the connection with what we've been told here, where, according to the Ukrainians, that Russia has activated sleeper cells inside of Ukraine to sow chaos. It was more meant in like false information that there is a big fight between Zelensky and Zaluzhny, between the political and the military leadership, where they were saying basically, no, the Russians invented it, but the time frame seems very close that probably some poisonous food was being handed out at the GUR canteen. At least that would be something that can be suspected if you have the wife of the head of the GUR as well as GUR members being poisoned in a separate event, in the same event, likely in the same event. Then we have some weird news about troop generation, actually quite logical ones as well. Now, according to this here, a mother of a Storm Z unit soldier, so one of the prison recruits, told her that the soldiers take the money they are being paid for serving it and giving it to the officers, and thus they bribe themselves out of having to fight. A very interesting system, very logical in its application. What good are $2,000-3,000 for a month if you're dying while earning them? And if we think that a unit probably has several hundred of them, that's actually a lot of money that can get together if they hand over the majority of their earnings or all of their earnings to save their skin. If that keeps them out of the fight for the half year that they sign up to then be pardoned, I think that's probably a fair deal. If otherwise they would face 10-15 years in prison, additional 10-15 years. So not fighting and just sitting around in uniform for half a year and then being pardoned sounds actually like a fairly nice deal. So it seems like some of the Storm Z units have found a smart solution to their dilemma, which was that they have been expended in meat attacks, as the Russians call them, like in human wave attacks. Then we have something from the political sphere. There is an article in one of the German newspapers that says that that is picking on the old theme that, according to criticism, Boris Johnson, then Prime Minister of Great Britain, said to Ukraine they should keep fighting on. This is being spread around in misinformation again and again all the time, where, according to Boris Johnson, apparently told the Ukrainians, don't make peace, keep fighting. Now, this article here is referencing to a close party member of Zelensky. I think he's the head of his party, or at least the head of the faction inside of parliament. Let me see if I can, I can actually translate it to English as well. And here it says that according to Arachamia, Ukraine did not agree to the peace proposal because the Ukrainian side did not trust the Russians. In order to agree this point, of course, the neutrality, the constitution would have to be changed, but they didn't trust the Russians. When we came back from Istanbul, Boris Johnson came to Kiev and said that we shouldn't sign anything and just fight. However, Arachamia denied that the Ukrainian delegation was willing to sign the document, or that Johnson had pressured Kiev not to sign. There have long been rumors. It's at the same time, you have to say, Johnson, I think, came 6 days after the massacre of Bucha was discovered. So all of this came together. The Ukrainians thinking that if they sign anything, they avoid any potential protection from the Western side and making them a future victim. And doing this only makes sense if you think that the opposite side will keep the treaty. And then, of course, you have the Budapest Memorandum, where Russia guaranteed the international borders of Ukraine, even though it was not ratified in the Russian Duma. They still agreed to honor Ukrainians' national sovereignty in return to the nuclear weapons. Here we also have now an article from referencing to the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, and according to him, the West wants to freeze the Ukrainian conflict to gain time and rearm Ukraine. So according to him, it is the West who wants to freeze the conflict, not Ukraine. Personally, I don't think that it makes too much sense, because I would guess that Russia is more having a benefit from this, as it blocks off Ukraine, and any political change in the West can erode the support for the Ukrainian government. For instance, Donald Trump being elected would be one of the points where potentially the aid for the Ukrainian government could collapse. At the same time, prominent mill bloggers in Russia agree with that, and they argue that Ukraine would use that time to reorganize and rearm, and at the same time, and this is actually a fairly valid point, the containment of Russia would be succeeding. If the conflict is frozen and the support for Ukraine, the military support for Ukraine, is not collapsing, if Ukraine is still receiving ammunition, weapons, and if at the same time the suffering of their own soldiers isn't so high that the civil order collapses, if the money keeps coming so the Ukrainian government can afford to keep these numbers of soldiers in the field, then actually it might work, because Russia can't possibly do another invasion if they only have a ceasefire or a frozen conflict with Ukraine, occupying 6 oblasts of Ukraine, at least partially occupying them, where behind which a strong Ukrainian army sits. But this would probably actually stop Russia from doing any other adventures, as long as a Ukrainian armed force is still ready to fight and still waiting for them and waiting for an opportunity to reconquer its territory. So I have no idea. Generally, before reading that argument, I would have said Lavrov is saying nonsense. Russia would benefit a lot more from that freezing of the conflict. But if you think in the context that containing Russia, it's probably a valid plan. At least that's what I think. But you can leave your point of view to this in the comment section. Maybe it helps us get a better overview of the situation. And then we have the insider channel Cheka OGPU that is talking about the Russian attempts to do hybrid warfare against Finland. You've probably heard it, that in the past couple days, the Russians sent a lot of illegal migrants to the Finnish border, trying to push them across the border to start destabilizing the European Union again, as Russia did, or Belarus did last year. I think it was last year with Poland. Now the Finnish have reacted really, really fast, and now it's kind of funny that this is a pro-Russian channel that is well connected among the intelligence agencies. They are now saying now migrant stormtroopers have to be settled in Russia, and on the streets of Moscow you can meet unusual street cleaners. So according to them, they swept up potential migrants to push them into the European Union, and now they are sitting now they're having them in Russia and don't know what to do, so they will have to settle them themselves. Then we have some news which is directly connected from Iran. The Iranian foreign minister has now confirmed that Iran has bought Sukhoi 35, Mi-28 combat helicopters and Yak-130 combat trainers. Sukhoi 35, obviously a multi-role combat plane from the Russian side, probably the most modern that is viable. They supposedly have the Sukhoi 75, but there are like 10 in service, and production is close to zero, as it's still full of initial problems, whereas the Sukhoi 35 is combat ready and tested, and thus the best they can actually present to the world. According to this, Iran is receiving all of this, is going to receive all of this. This was one of the most obvious payments that Russia will pay to Iran after it became clear that Iran is giving them ammunition, Shahid, and probably even ballistic missiles, as Iran is in dire need of modern combat planes. They've received a couple of MiG-29 in the 1990, which are completely obsolete now, and they have received nothing newer than that. They tried their own hand in building some jets, but like, this is not, they haven't been able to produce anything that is combat capable, anything that can get on the same level as their potential opponents, whereas with the Sukhoi 35, they might actually reach that point finally. And when we are at fighter jets, we also have some rumors about support. I have not seen this in any serious confirmation, but supposedly there are discussions between Ukraine and France about handing over 6 Mirage 2000. Now, the Mirage 2000 is a plane that could probably be roughly compared with the F-16, how combat capable it is a vast difference to which modernization status it has, but it can be more or less compared to the F-16. Only that it's French, and that the French still have some, I think, even in inventory, and they should have some in storage as they're being replaced with the Rafale. And now it was one of the options. It seems now to be the case that talks are happening between Ukraine and France for them to receive Mirage 2000s as well. That was it from me for now. If you like the situation report, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the comment section. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. So thank you very much to everyone already supporting this. And that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.